I'm a member of the board, and I'm here to introduce Ellie Bluestein, who is tonight the second annual recipient of the Fresno Free College Free Speech Award. Before we introduce Ellie, I want to tell you a slightly personal story, which is that 8 years ago, I was living in the Bay Area, and I had been living there for 10 years. And I was debating whether to move back to Fresno after having had a wonderfully interesting, if not always happy life in the Bay Area. And I was staying with a friend, and it was a summer night, and people who are Fresnans, sorry Amy, but people who are Fresnans will appreciate the romance of this. It was a Fresno summer night. It was about 11 o'clock at night. It was probably 89 degrees outside. I was sitting on somebody's back porch on the second floor. I was looking out at the night, and I heard this incredible music. It was folk music, and it was banjo music and mandolin music and guitar music, and it was people singing, and it was people having a good time in a way I hadn't heard people have a good time since I had left this town 10 years before. And I looked in the direction of the sound of this music, and I knew exactly where it was coming from. It was coming from Jean and Ellie Bluestein's backyard. It was a turning point in my life, and I decided I wanted to live in the town where that music was made and where people played that music for no apparent reason other than to be together and to listen to it and to sing and to enjoy each other's company. I have returned to this town, and I have never looked back. Ellie Bluestein is probably the woman in this town who is most loved by the other women in this town. Amen. She and Jean Bluestein moved here in 1964, and she has been an activist and our conscience ever since. I wrote down a little short list of the things that Ellie has done since she's been in Fresno. This is far from all-encompassing, but I'll tell you some of those things. And then some of the women, only some of the women who love her with unlimited affection, are going to welcome her tonight. In the late 60s and early 70s, Ellie Bluestein was very active in harboring and assisting and in every way being a mentor to draft resistors during the war in Vietnam. Ellie Bluestein developed and over the years promoted a program for conflict resolution in the Fresno Unified School District. Ellie Bluestein and Pat Walk put together a book called 20 Fresno Women Committed to Change, which many of us still have. She has been, since she arrived here, the leader, the mentor, and the inspiration behind the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in Fresno. Just 2 years ago, she organized the 50th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and invited Ann Fagan Ginger to come and expose the young students at Fresno City College to an entire day of discussion about human rights in Fresno. She has done workshops on alternatives to the arms race, and she has questioned the issue, what is security in the Fresno City schools? She developed and did 1 year of the Fresno International Year of Peace celebration, also in the Fresno City schools. This comes, I'm sure, from her years of being a teacher. So those are a few of the reasons, but only a few of the reasons that she was our unanimous recipient of this year's award, Free Speech Award from the Fresno Free College Foundation. Now, to complete my introduction, I would like to invite a few of her friends up here. We have written a little song about Ellie. It is to the tune of Joe Hill. There's been a little bit of assistance from Ellie's children who were not able to be here tonight. These verses were written with nothing but love and affection for this woman who has been an invaluable contributor to the intellectual and musical and social life of our town. So thank you so much, Ellie. So here's your little song.
She helps the O's evade the draft during the Vietnam War. She helped so many brave young men when they knocked on her door. When they knocked on her door. She hid them out, she cared for them, she kept them from the draft. When Nixon said, "I want you boys," Ellie Bluestein laughed. Ellie Bluestein laughed.
Would you believe it if I said I was speechless? I prepared a little something. I really want to thank the Fresno Free College Foundation for this incredible honor. I don't know what else to say, except I remember what Louise Erickson said when Wilf gave her a life membership. She said, "Why are you giving me this award for doing the things that I've loved to do all my life with the people that I love to be with?" And that's just the way I feel. These are the people that I most respect and love in Fresno, and I've been doing the things that I've wanted to do and felt I had to do. So this award is incredible. I don't feel I've risked or sacrificed. I've had the support of my family, my husband and my children. Nobody ever said to me, "Shut your mouth, Ellie, or I won't get my promotion next year." When he didn't get his promotion, he knew it was for the things he had said and done. So I have, as I said, I don't feel I've risked or sacrificed. I've done the things that have been important to me with the people that I love doing them with. So it's just an incredibly great honor to be recognized in this way. Since the award said that I was being recognized for a lifetime of work on behalf of freedom and justice, I thought maybe you want to know a little bit about how I got started. I think I was not a year old when my parents carried me on their shoulders to the May Day parade in Manhattan, in New York, where we lived. And that was the Workers' Parade in 1929, and it was quite a parade at that time. And I was probably carrying a red flag. So this was in the 1929 when there were a lot of radical things going on in this country. When I was 9 years old, my parents sent me to a left-wing Jewish camp near Poughkeepsie, New York, where I heard Pete Seeger and Paul Robeson. And years later, I came back there as a counselor and met Jean Bluestein when I was 17. But we waited a long time. We didn't get married till we were 20. And then I went to New York University, where I did my first lobbying in Washington from the university against universal military training. And but I guess the really biggest kind of epiphanic transformation that took place in my life was when I had my children. Giving birth, bringing forth life was an important thing for me, an important commitment to life. And I remember feeding my first child and thinking of women all over the world who didn't have food to give their children, and what a terrible thing that must be. And I remember having tears in my eyes just thinking about it, and feeling a need to have a connection with international women. And that was when I joined the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And I found that connection, and I've reinforced it many times when I lived in Finland, when we lived in France, when we lived in Japan and in China, and attending international congresses with women from all over the world who are working for the same thing, for peace and justice, and for food, for enough for everybody. And of course, I realized too that that was the only way we would have peace, was if we could share, if everybody had enough. So that was one important, really, transformation that took place. And the other was during the Vietnam War period, when I became a pacifist. My oldest son had to register for the draft, and I could not, under any circumstances, send him to kill the child of another woman who had reared and loved and nurtured her child, and to a country that had never threatened us in any way or it was of no danger to us. It was totally inconceivable to me. And I became obsessed. Some people think I still am, but I really was at that time. Well, we marched, we demonstrated, we had rallies. We had the wonderful Fresno folk song poetry quartet with Gene and Pete Everwine and Phil Levine and Roger Chittick and Bob Mezzi, and we had hootenannies. June Loring and I really miss June. June Loring and I organized the Fresno Draft Center with Vic McLean and Jack Emerson and John Roll and dear Father David Carrier. And we had people come, draft counselors and lawyers come to Fresno to set up workshops on alternatives to the draft. We had it a number of times so that we could educate ourselves on how to do this counseling and so that young people, young men who were interested could get the counseling. We went to the school administration and we demanded the right to have information in all the high schools, in the counseling offices on alternatives to the draft, and with our phone numbers, and we got plenty of phone calls. We spent hours doing individual counseling. We demanded the right for equal time with the recruiters, and we went into the classrooms when the recruiters came in to get the young men to enlist. We came in and talked about alternatives to enlisting, the various classifications. And we got up a list of doctors, psychologists and psychiatrists, and lawyers who would meet with young men who needed draft deferments or help if they were refusing. This was all on a pro bono basis. And I remember Bill Rickert was one of the lawyers who helped young men who refused and then needed legal help. So we counseled young men who wanted to be COs on what they would have to do and on how they had to prepare. Sometimes if somebody was refused, we would contact our congressman and get help. Even old Bernie Sisk, who was a hawk all the way during the war, would intervene in an individual case of somebody who needed to get a CO. One of the things we did, you know, that the draft was not equitable. You know that if you were a student, if you were middle class and had been to doctors all your life and had allergies and substantiated medical problems, you could get a deferment. But if you were poor, if you were from the barrio, if you had never been to a doctor, it was impossible. And this is why it was important for young men who needed to have things substantiated, get to see a doctor or a psychiatrist or whatever. The other thing was that if you were from the Oakland or Downey, California, you couldn't get a medical deferment as long as you were able to walk into the draft office because so many guys were refusing to go in those places that they couldn't fulfill their quotas. But in Fresno, there were a lot of gun-happy guys signing up to go, and they had no trouble fulfilling their quotas. So if you had a legitimate medical excuse, a medical deferment, in Fresno you could get a deferment. And so we had a lot of guys coming here from other parts, from Southern California and from the Bay Area, who wanted to set up residence in Fresno. So we had a list of people who would give their addresses as residents. Sometimes they would stay with us overnight. Sometimes they would just meet us. Sometimes they would call for an address. And in this way, they were able to avoid being drafted. And that was our goal. We did not want to send cannon fodder over to kill or be killed. I mention this because, you know, Catherine gave you a whole list of things, and some of them were true and some of them she made up. But this was one of the things that was really important to me. And as I said, that really transformed me in a way because I really became a pacifist at that time in my life. And I spoke all over it. The university, at schools, on the mall, at rallies. It was just, as I said, I was obsessed, and I know many of you were too. So I just wanted to tell that because that's one of the most important things I feel I've done. And I still meet people today. This is amazing. I can be in Berkeley or even in Fresno. Somebody will come, some middle-aged man will come up to me and say, "You don't remember me, but you took care of me when I was going to be drafted." So, and that's very satisfying to me because I feel that was an important thing I did. I don't want to take any more time because Amy Goodman's important, and I'm so glad she's here to talk to us. I listen to her every morning. I just want to tell you, I would just want to thank all my dear friends for having come. It's a wonderful group of people here. I really love it that you all came. And the song was great. I thank the Folklore Society people for that. And I especially want to thank Cynthia Loberg for this beautiful flower.